The crimson warships of the Zephyrian Empire hung silently above Earth like deadly metal clouds. Inside the flagship, Commander Vextar studied the blue planet with cold satisfaction. His species had conquered 43 worlds using the same proven method. Overwhelming force followed by swift surrender. The primitive humans below seemed no different from countless other species that had fallen before them. Vextar's clawed fingers tapped against the command console as he reviewed intelligence reports. These humans spent most of their time fighting each other with crude weapons. Their technology was centuries behind Zephyrian standards. Their military bases used metal and concrete instead of energy shields. This would be the easiest conquest yet. Begin the demonstration attack, Vextar ordered, his voice carrying the confidence of someone who had never known defeat. Target their largest military installation. One precise strike should convince them to surrender. Far below on Earth, Lieutenant Kim Tae-ho was drinking his third cup of coffee during the night shift at Ozone Air Base. The young officer had joined the military to serve his country, but most nights involved nothing more exciting than checking radar screens and filing reports. He was reviewing maintenance schedules when the sky suddenly turned bright red. The first alien energy blast struck without warning. It carved through the main runway like a knife through paper, vaporizing concrete and steel in a flash of superheated light. The explosion threw Tae-ho against the wall of the control tower, but his training kicked in immediately. All units, he shouted into his radio, ignoring the pain in his shoulder. We are under attack by unknown aircraft. This is not a drill. Through the smoke and flames, strange silver ships descended from the sky. They moved with perfect formation, their hulls gleaming under the base's emergency lights. Tae-ho had never seen anything like them, but he knew they meant trouble. Sergeant Lee Min-ho was in the weapons depot when the attack began. The explosion rattled every missile and ammunition crate, but the experienced soldier immediately began organizing a response. He had served in 3 different conflicts and learned that panic killed more soldiers than enemy fire. Grab the stingers. Min-ho yelled to his crew. Whatever those things are, they fly like aircraft. Private Park So-young was monitoring communications equipment when the base's systems went haywire. Strange electromagnetic pulses were jamming their radar and radio frequencies. But So-young had always been good with electronics, and she quickly noticed patterns in the interference. The jamming pulses come in 12-second intervals, she reported to anyone who would listen. I think I can work around them. The Zephyrian ground forces landed expecting immediate surrender. Their armor gleamed like liquid metal, and their weapons hummed with deadly energy. They had performed this same operation dozens of times before. The local military would see their superior technology and give up without a fight. But something went wrong immediately. Instead of cowering soldiers, the Zephyrians found humans who moved with surprising speed and coordination. Lieutenant Tae-ho had managed to rally his scattered forces, and they were already adapting to the alien threat. Their shields flicker every few seconds, observed Sergeant Min-ho, watching through binoculars as alien soldiers advanced across the damaged runway. There's got to be a recharge cycle. The humans began using tactics the Zephyrians had never encountered. Instead of meeting them in open battle, they used the base's damaged infrastructure as cover. Twisted metal and burning debris became shields and weapons. Private So-young had rigged the base's public address system to broadcast on the same frequency as the alien communications. Every time the Zephyrians tried to coordinate their attack, they heard loud music or random human voices instead. The aliens found their precise military formation breaking down as humans attacked from unexpected angles. These primitives were supposed to be inferior, but they seemed to learn and adapt with frightening speed. When one Zephyrian soldier fell, Sergeant Min-ho immediately grabbed the alien's energy rifle. The weapon was unlike anything he had ever seen, but his years of experience with different military equipment helped him understand its basic function. The power cell connects here, he muttered to himself, examining the weapon while laser fire buzzed overhead. And this must be the targeting system. Within minutes, Min-ho had figured out how to reverse the weapon's energy flow. Instead of firing outward, it would overload and explode. He began teaching other soldiers the same technique. The Zephyrians watched in growing confusion as their own weapons turned against them. This had never happened before. These humans were supposed to be primitive, but they were adapting to alien technology faster than seemed possible. Commander Vextar received increasingly desperate reports from his ground forces. What should have been a simple demonstration of power had turned into actual combat. Worse, his soldiers were losing. "Sir," reported his tactical officer, "the humans are using our own weapons against us. They've also started predicting our movement patterns." Vextar stared at the battle reports in disbelief. No species had ever adapted this quickly to Zephyrian technology. Most civilizations took years to understand even basic alien concepts. These humans were learning in real time during active combat. The final blow came when Lieutenant Tejo's forces managed to capture an intact Zephyrian transport. Instead of studying it carefully like civilized species usually did, they immediately began taking it apart to understand how it worked. "Retreat," Vextar ordered, his voice tight with frustration. All forces returned to orbit immediately. As the alien ships lifted off, they left behind smoking ruins and scattered technology. But they also left behind something much more dangerous: humans who had tasted alien technology and learned they could master it. The Zephyrians had expected easy victory but found determined resistance. They had expected fear but found adaptation. Most troubling of all, they had expected superiority but found equals who grew stronger under pressure. The first contact between humans and aliens ended with the invaders retreating, carrying news that would soon spread throughout the galaxy. News of the failed attack at Ozon Air Base spread through military networks around the world faster than the Zephyrians had thought possible. Within 6 hours, every major government knew that Earth was under alien invasion. But instead of the panic and chaos the aliens expected, they found something far more dangerous: humans working together. General Choi Jae-min sat in his underground command center in Seoul, coordinating with military leaders from every continent. The screens around him showed troop movements, supply lines, and most importantly, teams of scientists already working on the alien technology recovered from Ozon. "The Americans captured 3 intact energy weapons," reported his aide. "The Russians have pieces of their armor. The British recovered part of a communication device." Dr. Han Soo-jin had not slept for 18 hours. She stood in a laboratory surrounded by alien technology, her team of engineers working frantically to understand how it functioned. The metal was unlike anything on Earth, and the power sources seemed to violate several laws of physics. "This energy cell should be impossible," she muttered, holding up a glowing crystal the size of her thumb. "But if we can figure out how it works." Meanwhile, Captain Kang Do-hyun was preparing for a very different kind of mission. His Special Forces unit had volunteered for the most dangerous job imaginable: hunting alien scouts in the cities. The Zephyrians were sending small teams to gather intelligence, expecting to move unseen among the primitive humans. They were wrong. "Remember," Do-hyun told his team as they prepared their equipment, "these aliens have better technology, but they've never faced guerrilla warfare. They think in straight lines. We don't." Specialist Yoon Ji-woo checked her rifle for the 10th time. She had been Seoul's best police sniper before joining the military, and now she was about to hunt creatures from another world. The scope on her weapon had been modified with parts from alien targeting systems, giving her abilities no human sniper had ever possessed. Sergeant Nam Ho-suk carried a backpack full of explosives, but these were unlike any bombs ever made on Earth. His engineering background had helped him understand how to combine human explosives with alien power sources. The results were devastating. The first alien scout team landed in downtown Seoul just after midnight. They wore advanced camouflage that bent light around their bodies, making them nearly invisible. Their mission was simple: observe human behavior and identify weakness points for future attacks. But Do-hyun's team was already waiting. "Contact," whispered Ji-woo from her position on a rooftop. 3 targets moving through Myeongdong. Their camouflage flickers every few seconds when they move. The aliens moved through the empty streets with confidence. Their stealth technology had worked perfectly on every other world they had scouted. No primitive species had ever detected them before contact. They had no idea that human thermal imaging could see their body heat, or that their electromagnetic signatures showed up clearly on modified radar equipment. Do-hyun's team struck from 3 directions at once. Ho-suk's explosive devices, hidden in seemingly normal trash bins, created chaos and confusion. Ji-woo's enhanced rifle fired shots that the aliens' armor couldn't stop. Do-hyun himself moved through the smoke like a shadow, using techniques learned from decades of urban warfare. The alien scouts tried to retreat, but they found that the humans had turned the entire city block into a trap. Every alley led to another ambush. Every escape route had been predicted and blocked. When the smoke cleared, Do-hyun's team had captured 2 aliens alive and recovered all of their equipment. More importantly, they had proven that the invaders could be beaten. Similar scenes played out in cities around the world. In New York, former police officers used their knowledge of the city's underground tunnels to ambush alien patrols. In London, soldiers turned the subway system into a maze of traps and ambush points. In Tokyo, Teams of engineers had already begun building weapons using captured alien technology. Major Song Hygiene worked in a secure facility beneath the city, monitoring alien communications with equipment that shouldn't have been able to decode their language. But human computer programmers had found patterns in the alien signals, and artificial intelligence systems were learning to translate at incredible speed. "Sir," she reported to General Choi during their morning briefing, "we're intercepting their communications. They're calling for reinforcements from their home fleet." "That's good news," the general replied, surprising his aide. "Good news, sir? It means they're scared," Choi explained. "They've never had to call for help before." The Zephyrians, accustomed to swift victories, found themselves fighting a war unlike anything in their military history. Every scout team they sent returned with stories of impossible human tactics. Their enemies seemed to appear from nowhere, strike with devastating effectiveness, and disappear before retaliation was possible. Commander Vextar reviewed the reports with growing unease. His species had conquered dozens of worlds, but none had fought back like this. Most civilizations either surrendered immediately or fought conventional battles that Zephyrian technology could easily win. But these humans were different. They learned from every encounter, adapted their tactics in real time, and somehow managed to turn their apparent technological disadvantage into strength. "Sir," reported his intelligence officer, "we've lost contact with 17 scout teams in the last 48 hours. 17 teams meant over 100 trained soldiers, vanished without trace on what was supposed to be a primitive world." The hunters had become the hunted, and for the first time in their military history, the Zephyrians were learning what it felt like to be afraid. The Zephyrian High Command had seen enough. Commander Vextar stood before the War Council, his reputation crumbling with each failed report from Earth. The elders demanded answers he could not give. "Deploy the Void Hunters," ordered Supreme Admiral Kethran, his voice echoing through the massive war chamber. "If conventional forces cannot handle these primitives, send our best." The Void Hunters were the Empire's ultimate weapon. Cybernetically enhanced soldiers with metal implants that made them faster, stronger, and deadlier than any natural warrior. They had crushed rebellions across 43 worlds. No enemy had ever survived contact with them. 300 Void Hunters descended toward Earth in sleek black ships. Their leader, Commander Ziwaxthul, had personally executed the surrender ceremonies of 12 different species. His cybernetic eye could track multiple targets simultaneously, and his enhanced reflexes could dodge projectiles that moved faster than sound. "This world ends today," he announced to his warriors as they prepared for deployment. But on Earth, humans were no longer the same species the Zephyrians had first attacked weeks ago. Colonel Oh Dong-wook commanded the Joint Defense Force from a bunker system that hadn't existed a month earlier. Human engineers had worked day and night, using captured alien technology to build defenses that combined the best of both civilizations. "Sir, we have incoming," reported his communications officer. 300 hostiles moving fast. Lieutenant Colonel Bae Youngmi had spent weeks studying every piece of intelligence about alien combat tactics. She had developed new protocols that seemed to violate basic military strategy but had proven devastatingly effective against Zephyrian forces. "Teams Alpha through Echo, execute Pattern 7, she commanded. "Remember, they expect us to fight like soldiers. Don't." The Void Hunters landed in Busan expecting to face the same disorganized resistance that had troubled their regular forces. Instead, they found something that defied all their tactical programming. Human soldiers moved with coordination that seemed impossible for a species without cybernetic enhancement. They appeared to communicate without radios, react to threats before they became visible, and execute complex maneuvers as if they shared a single mind. Corporal Kim Soo-min and Private First Class Lee Hyun-woo found themselves trapped in an abandoned factory with 3 Void Hunters advancing on their position. Any normal soldiers would have been dead within seconds. But Soo-min had learned something during the weeks of fighting that no military academy taught. When fighting enemies with superior technology and physical abilities, the key was to make them fight on human terms. "The support beam above them," she whispered to Hyun-woo. "Can you hit it?" "With what?" "My rifle can't penetrate their armor." "Not the armor. The ceiling." Hyun-woo understood immediately. While Soo-min created a distraction by firing at the Void Hunters directly, he aimed at the structural supports 20 feet above them. The bullets did no damage to the aliens, but they weakened the old concrete enough that when Soo-min detonated her improvised explosive device, the entire section of ceiling collapsed. The Void Hunters' enhanced reflexes were fast enough to dodge bullets, but not fast enough to escape several tons of falling concrete and twisted metal. Dr. Lim Unisio had made breakthrough after breakthrough in understanding alien technology. Working alongside engineer Park Jin-young, she had discovered something the Zephyrians didn't know about their own cybernetic warriors. Their enhancements make them incredibly efficient, she explained to the military briefing, but efficiency requires predictability. They literally cannot adapt to completely irrational behavior. This discovery changed everything. Human tactics became deliberately unpredictable. Soldiers would abandon strategic positions to save single civilians. They launched attacks that should have been suicide missions but somehow succeeded through sheer determination and improvisation. Captain Shin Minho led a squad that included reformed criminals, retired athletes, and college students who had volunteered for military service. None of them had extensive military training, but they fought with a creativity that baffled their cybernetically enhanced enemies. "They're trying to flank us from the east," reported Sergeant Park Eun-young, monitoring alien movements through hacked surveillance cameras. "Good," replied Minho. "Let them. When they get to the intersection, Corporal Yoon will be waiting with the modified alien weapon Dr. Lim's team built." The weapon shouldn't have worked. It combined human engineering with alien power sources in ways that violated both species' understanding of physics. But it worked because humans had stopped trying to understand alien technology and started improvising with it instead. The Void Hunters began experiencing something they had never felt before: doubt. Their tactical computers could not predict human behavior because humans weren't following any logical patterns. They fought like they had nothing to lose and everything to protect. During the battle for Busan's industrial district, Specialist Kim Hae-won single-handedly held off 5 Void Hunters using nothing but modified construction equipment and explosives made from household chemicals. When her position was finally overrun, she had eliminated 3 of the enhanced warriors and delayed the others long enough for civilian evacuations to complete. The aliens found that humans became more dangerous as their situation became more desperate. Instead of breaking under pressure, they seemed to draw strength from impossible odds. Commander Xuexthul, for the first time in his enhanced existence, began to retreat from a battle. His tactical analysis showed that continued engagement would result in unacceptable losses to his forces. "This is impossible," he reported to the fleet. "These humans fight without regard for tactical logic. They sacrifice strategic advantages to protect individuals. They use weapons that shouldn't function and tactics that should fail." The Void Hunters, the Empire's ultimate weapon, found themselves outmaneuvered by humans who refused to fight by any rules they understood. The massive Zephyrian battle fleet emerged from hyperspace like a swarm of metallic locusts. 300 warships, each one capable of destroying entire cities, hung in Earth's orbit like harbingers of doom. Admiral Zexthal commanded from the flagship, his patience finally exhausted with what he called the human problem. "Today we end this embarrassment," he declared to his fleet commanders. "No more ground forces. No more tactical experiments. We glass the planet from orbit and claim the resources." But the humans had spent months preparing for exactly this moment. General Ryu Seung-hwan coordinated the global defense from a bunker complex that extended 3 miles beneath Seoul. The facility buzzed with activity as officers from every nation worked together, their differences forgotten in the face of extinction. Screens showed defensive positions across the globe, each one representing humanity's desperate gamble. "All stations report ready," announced his aide, Major Kim Do-young. "The civilian evacuation is complete." Admiral Park Mi-young stood on the bridge of what had once been a luxury cruise ship. Now it bristled with weapons built from captured alien technology and human ingenuity. Around her, a fleet of converted cargo vessels, fishing boats, and private yachts prepared for battle against the most advanced military force in the galaxy. "This is Admiral Park to all vessels," she broadcast on every frequency. "Today we show them what happens when you threaten our home." The human fleet looked pathetic compared to the alien armada. Jury-rigged weapons systems powered by modified alien energy cells. Armor plating welded onto civilian hulls. Communications equipment that mixed Earth satellites with captured Zephyrian technology. But appearances were deceiving. Captain Shin Woo-jin piloted a fighter craft built in a garage by unemployed auto workers and retired engineers. His cockpit was a mixture of airplane controls and alien interfaces that no pilot should have been able to master. Yet he flew with precision that amazed even himself. "Gold leader to all squadrons," he transmitted. "Remember, their shields rotate frequency every 30 seconds. Wait for the gaps." Flight Sergeant Kang Yijin coordinated attack patterns from a modified air traffic control center. Her screens showed hundreds of human aircraft converging on the alien fleet from every direction. Most were piloted by civilians who had volunteered for what everyone knew was likely a one-way mission. The battle began at dawn. The Zephyrian fleet opened fire with weapons that could crack continents. Energy beams lanced down toward Earth's major cities, expecting to see humanity's capitals vaporized in seconds. Instead, the beams struck massive energy shields that shouldn't have existed. Human engineers had spent months studying captured alien defensive technology, then improved it using principles the Zephyrians had never considered. Impossible, Admiral Zexthal muttered, watching his planet-killing weapons scatter harmlessly against human defenses. They've reversed our own shield technology. The human counterattack came from everywhere at once. Modified satellites, previously used for weather monitoring and communications, suddenly revealed hidden weapons systems. Space debris that had been floating in orbit for decades turned out to be disguised missile platforms. Even the International Space Station opened fire with weapons that fired chunks of metal at incredible velocity. Sergeant Choi Haiwon's engineering corps had spent weeks turning Earth's infrastructure into a weapon. Every major city had become a fortress. Subway tunnels were filled with soldiers carrying weapons that combined human explosives with alien power sources. Skyscrapers had been converted into giant gun emplacements. But the real shock came when the human fleet reached the alien armada. The converted civilian vessels looked fragile compared to Zephyrian warships, but they fought with tactics that defied military logic. Instead of engaging in traditional fleet combat, they swarmed the alien ships like angry bees. Captain Yu Sang-ho commanded a converted container ship that rammed directly into the side of a Zephyrian cruiser. His vessel was destroyed instantly, but the explosion tore a hole in the alien ship's hull that allowed dozens of human fighters to pour inside. "For Earth," became the battle cry heard on every frequency as human pilots threw themselves at impossible odds. Lieutenant Commander Lee Hyun-soo led a squadron of converted jet fighters that had been modified with alien engines. They moved through space in ways that should have been impossible for atmospheric aircraft, weaving between Zephyrian capital ships and striking at critical systems. The aliens found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to follow the rules of warfare. Human ships would sacrifice themselves to save others. Pilots would ram their fighters into alien weapon systems to create openings for their comrades. Ground forces would launch suicidal attacks to protect civilian evacuation routes. Dr. Han Soo-jin watched the battle from her laboratory, where she had spent months creating humanity's secret weapon. The device looked simple, just a modified alien communication array connected to every nuclear power plant on Earth. "Now," she whispered and pressed the activation button. Every Zephyrian ship in orbit suddenly lost power. Their engines died, their weapons went silent, and their shields collapsed. The electromagnetic pulse, amplified through their own technology, had turned their advanced systems against them. Admiral Zexthal stared in horror as his mighty fleet became sitting ducks. Human fighters swarmed through the disabled ships while ground-based weapons picked them off one by one. "How?" he demanded of his technical staff. "How did they learn to do this?" But there was no answer. Humanity had taken everything the aliens threw at them and turned it into strength. Their mortality had become their weapon. Their desperation had become their advantage. The turning point had arrived, and the galaxy would never forget what they learned about humans that day. The last Zephyrian ships limped away from Earth's orbit like wounded animals fleeing a predator. Admiral Zexthal sat in his command chair, staring at the tactical display that showed his once mighty fleet reduced to fewer than 50 vessels. 300 warships had approached Earth with confidence. Now most were floating debris or captured prizes in human hands. "Sir," his communications officer reported with a trembling voice, "the humans they're broadcasting on all frequencies." "What are they saying?" "They're asking if we need medical assistance for our wounded." Zexthal closed his eyes. Even in victory, these humans offered mercy to enemies who had come to destroy their world. It was a gesture that no other species in the galaxy had ever shown to Zephyrian forces. Commander Vextar, survivor of the first failed assault, spoke quietly from his station. "Sir, what do we tell the High Command?" The Admiral looked at the reports scattered across his desk. Casualty lists that defied belief. Tactical analyses that made no sense. Stories from survivors that sounded like myths rather than military intelligence. "We tell them the truth," he said finally. "We tell them about the species that fights harder when cornered. We tell them about the primitives who turned our own weapons against us. We tell them about humans." Back on Earth, the heroes of the conflict tried to return to their normal lives, but nothing would ever be normal again. Kim Tae-ho, the lieutenant who had coordinated the first defense at Ozan Air Base, now commanded a facility equipped with hybrid human-alien technology. Soldiers from around the world came to learn the tactics that had defeated the galaxy's most feared military force. The key is adaptation, he explained to a classroom of officers from 12 different countries. They had better technology, but we had something they couldn't understand: the ability to improvise under pressure. Dr. Han Sujin continued her research in laboratories that combined human creativity with alien science. But now she wasn't working alone. Delegations from across the galaxy arrived weekly, not as conquerors but as cautious visitors hoping to learn from human innovation. They want to understand how we reversed their technology so quickly, she explained to General Choi during their weekly briefing. Some of them seemed genuinely afraid of what else we might create. The stories of the war spread throughout the galactic community faster than lightspeed communications could carry them. Each telling added new details, and the legend grew with every retelling. On distant worlds, alien species spoke in whispered tones about the humans who had done the impossible. They told stories of warriors who fought with the fury of wild animals but the intelligence of master strategists. They described a species that became more dangerous when faced with extinction, not less. The tale of Captain Shin Woojin, who had piloted a homemade fighter against warships the size of cities, became a cautionary legend. His final battle, where he had sacrificed himself to create an opening for the decisive attack, was spoken of in hushed reverence. Stories of Sergeant Choi Haiwon's engineering corps, who had turned entire cities into weapons, were told in military academies across the galaxy as examples of tactical thinking that defied conventional wisdom. Park So-young, now Earth's primary diplomatic communications specialist, monitored the interstellar channels where these legends continued to evolve. She listened to alien broadcasts that described humans as a species that couldn't be conquered because they refused to accept defeat. "They're calling us the Undying Ones," she reported to the United Earth Council. "Some species believe we're immortal because we kept fighting even when death seemed certain." The Zephyrian Empire, once the galaxy's greatest military power, held an emergency session of their war council. The defeat at Earth had shaken their confidence in ways that centuries of victories couldn't repair. "We must revise our expansion doctrine," announced Supreme Admiral Kethran to the assembled generals. "Add Earth to the restricted territories list." "What threat classification should we assign?" asked a junior officer. The room fell silent. They had classifications for dangerous species, hostile civilizations, and protected worlds. But they had never encountered anything like humanity. "Create a new classification," Kethran decided. "Species designation, human. Threat level, extinction event. Note, do not engage under any circumstances. Trade agreements replaced invasion fleets. Scientific exchanges replaced subjugation attempts. Alien merchants offered advanced technology in exchange for human innovations. What had begun as an attempted conquest had become the foundation for unprecedented galactic cooperation. But the real change was in how the galaxy viewed warfare itself. The human doctrine, as military strategists called it, revolutionized tactical thinking across hundreds of species. The understanding that some civilizations became more formidable when threatened, not less, changed how conflicts were approached throughout known space. Colonel Oh Dong-wook, now head of Earth's Galactic Defense Academy, taught alien officers the principles that had defeated the Zephyrians. His most important lesson was simple: never underestimate an enemy's ability to adapt, and never assume that technological superiority guarantees victory. Earth remained untouched not because other species respected humanity, but because they feared what humans might become if truly threatened again. The galaxy had learned a valuable lesson. Some species grew stronger under pressure, and humans were the most dangerous example of that principle ever discovered. In the end, humanity found something they had never possessed before, not just peace but respect earned through strength. They had proven that even the most advanced civilizations could be defeated by determination, innovation, and the refusal to surrender. The legend of the day aliens learned to fear humans would be told for generations across the galaxy, a reminder that true strength came not from superior technology, but from the will to protect what mattered most.